We are in the BI Platform studio and I'm speaking with Alec Sharp, internationally acclaimed consultant and instructor on data modeling at Clariteq Systems Consulting. Alec, you did a session at our conference and the title was, I have to read out, Packaged Software and Data Modeling, the Surprising Reasons Behind Implementation Failures.
Yes.
What should be the role of data modeling in the implementation of packaged software?
Well, this goes back to the subtitle of the presentation, the element of surprise. the element of surprise, which is you would think that when organizations purchase software and are unhappy with it, even if they've gone through a very rigorous selection process, you would think maybe the problem is that they have missed certain requirements. In a way that's true, but the real requirement is down in the data model layer. So I look at the world of software as there is the data layer, there's the application logic or business logic layer, there's the presentation or user interface layer, that's very familiar. And I would think that maybe the problem is we're not delivering the correct functionality. But when I've helped companies understand why do we dislike this package that we so carefully selected, it almost always comes down to the data model. So I have found over the years that the number one reason for disappointment with purchase software is a data model mismatch.
Okay.
Can I tell you a story?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, when the first contract I had, when I realized that was, well, many years ago, and it was a very large, a global company, over 100,000 people, had purchased some software basically for recruiting purposes. And they thought they had done a great job, but nobody liked it, and the government regulators who expected certain data from it were unhappy, and they asked me to come and have a look at it. So I categorized all the complaints. Some were user interface related, some were application logic related, some were data related, and it turned out all the important ones were the data related issues. So I managed to convince the vendor to provide a data model. They sent me a 2-inch thick stack of DDL, but we reverse engineered their data model out of that and then compared it to the intrinsic data model for the business, and they were completely different. And when I did a presentation for the HR people, the director of HR at this huge company said, "This has been a revelation." I thought I should have charged more. But it was amazing when you put them side by side, how different they were.
Okay, but you mentioned mismatch. When implementing packaged software, how do you then decide when to customize the package to make it fit for your organization processes, or the other way around, to adapt the organization's processes to fit with the package?
Right, and that's well, I'll just cut right to the chase there. And I think that if you do choose software, you should assume that you're going to use it as is. Not you will choose certain configuration options. That's expected, but going into the modification of software, especially the data layer, that's a dangerous slope. It's a slippery slope, because if you start changing data structures, well, then you have to change the program logic that manipulates that, and then you're going to be causing user interface changes. That's not so hard, but changes at the data layer, they come at a cost. Now, the only exception, I would say, is if you are buying, say from IBM or Oracle, they will sell you, here's a standard set of financial models, and I know organizations that have used that as a starting point very successfully, but it's mostly their own application logic on top of those data models. So in general, you look at the two, here's our data model, here's the package's data model. If it's close enough, then great, but if there's a big difference, you're probably better off to look elsewhere. Or, lately, I'm surprised some of my clients are deciding we should just build it ourselves.
Okay.
Right, so there's a bit of a reversal happening there. Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, and in your session you discussed some modeling patterns that can make a huge difference in implementing packaged software. Can you give us an example?
Yes, yeah. And I was just teaching our data modeling masterclass the last 3 days, and one of the things I teach is a very simple pattern or rule, which is challenge the ones. So if you see, I'll give you an example. An attribute can have one value, so it's single valued, or it could have multiple values, be multi-valued. Well, if the package only supports single value, but your business demands multi-valued, a person may have multiple billing addresses, say, for one reason, then that's something we want to take into account. Or if we have a relationship, there was a really good example where we had a one-to-many relationship. You know, each course is offered via one or more classes. Each class is an offering of one course. And at the university that I was at, helping them select software for the registrar's office, they said, oh no, we have lots of classes that are offerings of multiple courses. Depending on the program, some people in the class might be getting credit for a psychology course and others are getting credit for a statistics course. Or I remember a transit company that had gone out. Management had been told that this was a great system for managing a transit system, but they hadn't really looked at some of the fundamentals. And the transit system that the software was built for, they didn't have the concept of a zone. There was just one big zone. Okay, challenge that.
Yeah.
No, we have many zones. That the transit system that the software was built for had one fare. Didn't matter if you went one stop or 20. You paid a flat rate, just for simplicity, okay? No, we have many fares. It's calculated dynamically. So that simple pattern, that is one pattern. The other is simply to ask, and many of the people viewing this will recognize me asking, what do you mean by? Because I always stress that's the most important question in data modeling. What do you mean by a site? Is that the same as a facility? Is it the same as a building? Is it the same as a campus? Is it the same as a city? And I've seen some very expensive software implementation failures because of failing to really understand the basic terminology.
Yeah.
I could probably go on and on, but I won't.
Yeah. And we're talking about packaged software implementation, so why is the data process connection so essential in these cases?
Well, because because what is moving through the process? Typically, let's say a process I've looked at many times in higher education, recruit, admit, and onboard a student. Well, what's going through that process sometimes is physically the student, maybe going through an onboarding activity, but mostly they're a package of data. So processes, as you know from when I teach our business process class, I always insist at a minimum they have an active verb and a noun. Okay, renew, policy. And that policy is going to be, that noun is going to be an entity in your data model. So they're absolutely intrinsically connected. And then the ability of our processes and the activities within the process, they are still basically manipulating data. And if that underlying data model doesn't line up with the business, there's going to be a lot of shared unhappiness.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. In your experience, what other factors outside data modeling contribute mostly to packaged software implementation failures?
Yeah. Oh, well, how long do we have?
Minutes,
okay,
not hours.
Okay, minutes, not hours. Well, I can give examples for at least 3 or 4 or 5. One of them, how is your integrator paid? If you bring in a company to help you implement the software, integrate it into your operation, how are they paid? And I had a case a few years back where the integrator was paid by the function point. So they didn't care about satisfaction or fit, we implemented 7 function points, here's the invoice. Or, I often hear from management, you know, the vendor has seen it all before. So let's just let them run with it. And they do, and we end up with an implementation that is pretty divergent from our needs. Or, oh, I'm getting excited now. I remember one where an organization purchased some software. It was basically customer relationship management. Let's say it was $5 million. By the time the project was done, they had spent $80 million. Why? Because management had decreed that there would be no process changes and no retraining needed, which means basically we're going to spend all this money on purchase software and turn it into what we already have. Okay? And I'll give you one final one, and this was over a $3 billion failure. And in this case, a major big box retailer had purchased, a lot of software, for merchandising and retail operations and warehousing and distribution. But they started turning it into something that it was never intended to be, which was they turned it into an EDI machine, electronic data interchange. So we looked at their processes, and there was no store, there was no distribution center, there was no warehouse, there was just all these EDI messages. And after they had spent over $3 billion, they finally realized it was a lost cause, and they pulled the plug. And we had told them, my colleague and I, a year and a half before, just in passing, this is going to fail. We were brought in to do some other work, but we saw what was happening and could just see that it was on a very dangerous path. So, I think I gave you 4.
Yeah.
There's many more.
Yeah, many more. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Alec, for the interview.
It was my pleasure.